Thanks for spending some of your lunch with me. This is Lunch with Laura. And today we're going to be talking about what's it worth to you spending smart in your case. Now, whether you're in the middle of a divorce case or if it's after divorce and you guys are, have custody issues or child support issues, just be really smart about, how you spend your money in your case. Sometimes things get really emotional and, you get embroiled in, you start digging your heels in, and sometimes that can be to your detriment. So we're just going to talk about a little bit today, just about keeping things in perspective that'll help you to keep a ceiling on your spending. Okay. So one of the things that you really want to hone in on and focus and concentrate on is, what are your goals? What do you hope to achieve? What do you want out of your case? Now, for example, if it's a divorce case, really sit down and put out a spreadsheet or talk to your person who usually does your taxes, or if you have a regular accountant, that's fine. But, really sit down and talk about, these are our assets and these are our debts, and really what makes sense for me right now in my life to, to really have as a deal breaker that I must have. What does the lay of the land look like? In light of, say for example, if you really need cash right now, what are the assets that really make sense to liquidate? Does it make sense? Can you really afford to stay in your house on your income? All those things that kind of factor into, what's important for you to really dig your heels in and fight over and really spend money on attorney's fees or spend money on, an expert or a professional to help you to kind of figure out what makes sense. Now, most of the time, I always say that it's probably a good investment even if you go to somewhere like H&R Block or some of the other tax preparers, and spend $100 to sit down and talk to someone and say, hey, what's the tax consequences if I take this property, and if I divide this and that, what does that look like? So I always think that that's a good a starting place anyway. If you don't have a regular accountant, or you really feel like you can't afford an accountant, that's one of the things that I would do. Or even just to have someone, even if it's just someone who just kind of reviews your spreadsheet and says, yeah, this makes sense and that makes sense. There are people who are certified financial divorce experts, and they are usually, sometimes they're on par with CPAs, but sometimes they can be a little bit cheaper. And then sometimes too, if you can just say, hey, I just need a consultation with you, and I half hour of your time to look at the spreadsheet for me, would you do that? That I would think is a really good investment, and something that you should think about as far as what dividing assets and who should take what and all that good stuff. So do that as number one. Consult an expert if you can. Number two is kind of lay out the land, do a spreadsheet, get an overall picture that really helps you to keep things in perspective. Okay, so do an overall picture of what everything looks like, even though that I know sometimes it's really hard to do, and I'm not minimizing that at all. I know it's hard to really kind of look to see, this is what I've built over, however many years that you were married, and to say, this is going to have to be divided now. So I appreciate that. I've had to do it, even though, unfortunately, by the time I got divorced, the only thing we were really dividing was debt. Okay, who's going to take what debt? So I can appreciate that. Okay, number three, try to look at your case if you can. If it really involves stuff and money, kids are a different matter. But if it really involves us dividing stuff, assets and debts, really try to divorce yourself emotionally from it. No pun intended. Really try to take yourself out of it emotionally and really look at it as a business deal. Because the bottom line is, when all is said and done, you guys, go your separate ways. It really is it's a business transaction. And so if you really kind of look at it that way, it'll help you, number one, not to be so reactive and to be proactive, and really kind of get in there and, like I said, kind of look at the lay of the land and keep an overall picture in your mind and the things that you want to accomplish. And say, for example, you want to go back to school, you say, you know what, I'm going to need some cash to do that. And so seen people argue over, Afghans that that their family members, knitted for them. I've seen people argue over stuffed pillows, like this, stuffed pillows, arguing over that, paying attorney's fees, stuffed pillows. Don't do that. Please don't do that. And it's seriously, that's God's honest truth. Arguing over stuffed pillows. Don't do that. Okay. But sometimes you just get entrenched, and you're so used to arguing, and sometimes it snowballs, and you don't want to end up there with all the dust settles with a big, large attorney's fees bill over stuff that it wasn't even worth the value of it. The value of it alone wasn't worth arguing over. Okay, it may have some sentimental value to you, but you really have to weigh that. You really have to weigh it and say, is it worth it? Is it worth the fight? Fight smart. Spend your money wisely. Spend your money, in the best way possible. If you have to spend it at all, if you can avoid it, if there's some things that you can say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'll take this instead of that if it really means that much to him. Okay, Okay, sorry about that. A lot of times you come out a whole lot better. So just think about that. The last thing is, okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to kids. If you're divorce case, if you had kids, or even if it's after your divorce and it becomes a custody issue, you guys, or there has some things come up, maybe when you guys are moving further away, maybe out of state, something like that, or relocating, far away, or say, for example, somebody gets remarried and, there's some concern about the new spouse, whether it's, the new wife usually, and you think for some reason, either the wife herself or there are people that hang around the wife that you're really concerned about, whether it's other family members or friends or whatever it is. Always try to keep your children's best interest at heart. Sometimes it is, you just really have to really look at the overall, okay, how many more years is it before, my child becomes an adult? How much is it going to cost for me to really see this through? And that's not to say that your children aren't worth it. If there really is a legitimate concern, then absolutely, then, you might have to pay for a home study evaluation, or no matter what, whatever that's called in your area, in your state. You might have to pay for a social worker or a person who is a licensed professional therapist or counselor to come in and give a recommendation to the court and act as an expert and a person who is going to help the court determine, if there is a legitimate concern, what the court should do about it. So just know, when you do express concerns, when you file a case regarding, whoever, whether it's the new wife or whatever custody issue is coming up, it might very well come to you spending more money for someone who's to come in to do an investigation and then come in as a witness to help the court determine what's going to be in the child's best interest. And the bottom line is, people never believe me when I tell them this initially, but it is the truth, and I tell you this from 13 years experience as a lawyer, okay? Most of the time, judges don't care about the parents. They don't care. They don't care that, your husband ran off with your sister and had 15 kids with her. They don't care. They don't care about, what you've been arguing about. They care about, are the kids going to be in danger emotionally or physically? Because especially if judges are elected in your state or in your county, they want to win those elections. They don't want the news splashed all over saying that the case that they ruled over, something bad happened in it. So, parents, they're like, yeah, whatever, you guys. I'm worried about the kids. And so, sorry to be the one to bear bad news, but, we go to these different conferences and, bar association functions, and, that's the truth. And so, you just want to be careful and always keep that in mind. Always keep that in the forefront of your mind. How would a judge view this? If I'm going into court and I'm saying X, Y, and Z, what's going to be the trigger to say, hey, I need to, for the judge to say, hey, I need to do something about this. And I'm more likely to do what you say because, what you say makes more sense, and you're backing up by, showing the emails and the, if your child has to go to, counseling, showing that the counseling that you've had to pay for, and sometimes even bring in the counselor to testify about what, your son or daughter might have said to them. Because a lot of times the court, unless your child is like 17, almost 18 or 16 around there, most of the time the court is not going to allow your child to testify. They're going to have an expert. They're going to have the therapist or the teacher or whoever would have information about what's going on with your kids. Have them come in because it's too traumatic. It is absolutely too traumatic. Even if your kids are 13, 14, there's still a lot of emotion attached to it. Both of you are the natural objection of your child's affection. So that just means that they naturally love you because you're their parents, and so it's hard. They feel torn. They feel like they're betraying one of you if there's, if they lean towards the other. There's so many studies that say, it's hard on kids. It really is hard. So just know that you'll probably end up spending money on an expert for those things, okay? So I hope that, sorry, one more thing as far as child support is concerned. Usually, in most states, you have the Attorney General's office, and, they usually are very overworked and backlogged. So sometimes it might take a while for your case to come up. But one thing is always double check their calculations. They're wonderful people, but sometimes the people who are inputting the data will put in the wrong year, so it starts calculating starting at the wrong time, and so the amount will be wrong, it'll be off. And you say, no, my child is, 7 years old, not 4 years old. This is the wrong date. So the child support calculation is supposed to be way up. You missed 3 years, so stuff like that happens. So always double check their calculations, and just try to, reasonably stay in touch. Don't call them every week because then they'll put your case, I won't say put the case at the bottom of the file, but, just try to always stay on their good side, okay? And just know that they're a good resource. One thing is that they have access to databases that normal attorneys don't. For example, in Texas, they can see where your ex has applied for a job, even if he didn't get the job. They can see where he's applying for jobs. We as lawyers don't have access to those type of databases, but as the state of Texas, they do. So just know that they're a good resource, and if you can avoid spending for an attorney in your child support case, that's good. But sometimes you can't avoid that because it might be child support and other things like custody and other issues that are bundled together with the child support issue. So sometimes you can't avoid having your own attorney. But if it's just strictly a child support issue, see if you can work with the Attorney General's office in your state, okay? So I hope that this video has been helpful. Leave a comment in the chat section. Tell me other videos, other subjects that you want to hear about, and I will do my best to try to deliver that important information to you. I want to make sure that the information I give you is relevant and important to you, the things that you want to know about and hear about, because it's, your time is precious, and I understand even though it's lunchtime, I want to make sure that you're spending your time as wisely as you can. So let me know what you want to hear. Even if you're viewing the tape version of this, let me know what you want to hear, all right? Enjoy the rest of your lunch and have a great day.